everybody.
And the room is filling up. We have a number of people that are involved with the Greater Miami Jewish Federation, my organization, with the Miami Beach Holocaust Memorial, and with leadership. As I mentioned earlier, I was trying to guess which Shelly it was. It is Shelly Nicely Groff, who is part of our lay leadership within Federation, is very active in summer camp organization, as well as she's the former chair of the JCRC, and has really been a wonderful lay leader. We're very fortunate to have her as part of our organization. And I see other people that are part of our lay leader experience on Miami Beach, and also from Temple Beth Shalom, a temple on Miami Beach. And Sharon Siegel, I think, is also part of, if it is the right Sharon Siegel, is also part of the Jewish Abilities Alliance experience as well.
Nice. Hi, everybody. I've been taking a Yiddish class through the Why I Love Yiddish initiative. And you may know Avi Hoffman, Dr. Miriam Hoffman. They're our instructors, and Avi just hosted the Why I Love Yiddish Fest. That it came out of Miami. It was global. It was online. I was just wondering if anyone saw it. So anyway, I'm gonna mute everyone except Nancy. Nancy, you can unmute.
Okay. All right, and as you like, whenever you're ready to start, we can start.
Okay. It's 6:03. I mean 7:03. I'm in the Midwest.
You're Midwest, but we're Miami. You're on time. We're never on time.
Oh dear.
Okay. We try to be really conscientious and thoughtful about people's time. So, but I will tell you, we have something called Miami time. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. Right? Yes. So that's part of our custom in Miami. We're always just slightly late, but we're always very pleased to be wherever we are. So we kind of figure we bring our smiles where we go, and maybe people will be gracious with us and realize that it's just part of our culture in Miami. But I do want to be thoughtful. So I'll go ahead and I'll start with an introduction of you and an introduction of myself. Thank you everyone for joining us. Welcome to our virtual experience for the month of Elul. I am Nancy Zaretsky, and I am the inclusion specialist with the Greater Miami Jewish Federation. I am tasked with the Miami Jewish Abilities Alliance, which is a program of the Greater Miami Jewish Federation. And I am very, very pleased during this month of Elul, our organization has created an opportunity for our whole community to learn from the convenience of their home. And it is 40 days, 40 nights for the celebration of Elul. And tonight we're very, very fortunate to have with us Shelly Christensen. And many people here may know of her work, but I think I should give you a proper introduction because we're very lucky and fortunate to have you with us. So Shelly is really a national thought leader in inclusion and diversity and disability and worship. She is a pioneer in the faith community and disability inclusion movement, an international speaker, an author, and a consultant. And her new book is entitled From Longing to Belonging, a practical guide to including people with disabilities and mental health conditions in your faith community. Shelly is also at the forefront of Jewish community inclusion for 19 years, leading and guiding Jewish organizations in innovative practices. And as we all know, if anything COVID has taught us, it's problem solving and approaching challenges with a new perspective. And Shelly is really in the forefront of thinking out of the box on how we can accomplish something. She's also been the co-founder of the Jewish Disabilities Awareness, Acceptance, and Inclusion Month, JDEM, and that was originally founded in 2009, I believe. And she has also contributed to many Jewish inclusion initiatives, such as the Reform Movement, Yachad, the Ruderman Chabad Inclusion Initiative, United Synagogue of Conservative Judaism, Jewish Federations of North America, and the Jewish Leadership Institute on Disabilities and Inclusion. So we are very, very fortunate to have Shelly join us today and share her wisdom with us. And I am now going to turn it over to Shelly. If you have questions, you can put them in the chat, or you can text or email me, whichever works for you. You have my email, nzaretsky@gmjf.org, or my number, which I'll put in the chat, and you can use the chat as well. So thank you very much, Shelly, for joining us. And I really appreciate having the opportunity to learn from you and with you as we take this path as a community.
Oh, thank you so much, Nancy. We all learn from each other, right? I think that's the beauty of this work. And we are so fortunate to have communities like Miami, like the greater Miami area, that is taking charge. Your position alone, Nancy, having you in that position is a total commitment to inclusion. And it takes that kind of leadership and that central coordination to really make it happen. So I want to thank you, Nancy, of course, for inviting me, and the Greater Miami Jewish Federation and the Miami Jewish Abilities Alliance. It's really cool to speak during 40 days and 40 nights. And here we go. So we'll just move to this. I know that you all have a question, or that if you don't have a question about this, you soon will have a question about this. And this is this. Christensen. It's my last name, and it is the Jewish spelling. We have many bits about our last name. My husband is Jewish now, converted to Judaism after 18 years of marriage, kind of timely. And my first reaction when he told me was, oh, good, now we can be buried together. So we have 3 sons with very Jewish sounding names: Aaron, Jacob, and Zachary, or Zachariah. And we also have 4 grandchildren, and they are the next generation of Jewish Christensens. And it's amazing, because when we were getting married, some of my relatives had me come over and said to me, what are you doing? Because of you, the Jewish people will no longer exist. And I was like horrified. Why are you sticking your nose in who I love in this business? And I do see their point, but honestly, my husband married into our religion. I didn't marry out, and it's been absolutely amazing. So Christensen, the Jewish spelling. It's my bit. Nancy, thank you for the great introduction. I'm just gonna give a tiny bit more. I cut my teeth at Jewish Family and Children's Service of Minneapolis. I'm happy to see Stacy Spencer, who is my colleague at JFCS, on this webinar. I started my work in this field as a parent, and we have 3 sons, as I said, and Jacob, our middle son, has an autism spectrum disorder. The only place that we never had difficulty or challenges or tsuris was at our synagogue, and our synagogue Hebrew school. They loved Jacob, they embraced all the kids, but it was in the public school where they didn't take the time to get to know him and understand him. And so what did I do? After a big confrontation with the assistant principal at our son's school, where I threatened to lawyer up, I decided to do something even better. I went to graduate school to find out why I was so angry at the world for my son having a disability. It was horrendous. And I was angry at God, and a lot of parents, and I talk about this, the parent concerns, because we as parents go through a lot of similar feelings and emotions regardless of the diagnosis. And some of you are parents of children with a diagnosis, and some of you support families of children and adults with disabilities. And it's really what I came to learn through all of this is that as I became an advocate, and it just bothered me so much to know that there were people out there who just wanted to be part of the Jewish community who couldn't be because of a diagnosis, because of how they walk or how they think or how they speak or not speak. So, and of course, it's a lot more complicated than that. But in 2007, I wrote the Jewish Community Guide to Inclusion of People with Disabilities. And that was pretty cutting edge at the time. It was the only book that was out there in any faith community talking about including people with disabilities. And after the book was published, that's when I started doing a lot of speaking and going to different communities. And I really loved that, but Minneapolis was always my laboratory. The things we did there, the whole book was piloted in our Jewish community with all of our synagogues and schools and so forth. But I realized that book was so focused on the Jewish institutions, on the organizations and what they could do. But we didn't really, at the time, pay attention to what people with disabilities and mental health conditions and their families wanted. And we didn't talk about how to support somebody, how to sit and listen to somebody. We didn't talk about the things that make us similar, the things that bind us as Jews. And so after I think I was at JFCS for almost 12 years, I left. I started my company, Inclusion Innovations. And almost 2 years ago, my second book came out. It's called From Longing to Belonging. And I happened to look on Amazon today. They've discounted it from $29.99 to $24 something, I'm just saying. And it's also available as a Kindle Unlimited book, so you can read it for free. But the reason I mention that is because that's the book that's taking us into this idea of belonging. And it's taking us into this idea that we are all humans. We're all in this together. And there's not a distinction of them and us. It's in us. And I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the thinking that goes into this book. But first, I wanted to kind of address the state of inclusion right now. And what we're looking at, of course, is something called ableism. It is the season of isms. And ableism it discriminates against people, biases against people with disabilities, oftentimes based on what one sees or what one thinks or what one knows. And so ableism really believes there's those of us that are capable and able, and we can do whatever we set our minds to do, whatever our talents are and so forth. And there are those people who just simply can't because they have a disability. And we know that's not true. And in all the work that we're doing, every one of us, we know that's not true. So the movement now is away from ableism. We've also had a shift in language, and the term disability is the most neutral of all terms. Terms like special needs or special abilities or people of all abilities or handy capable. They're euphemisms, and they really are, like patting people on the heads and saying, you have special needs. Well, we all have different needs and we all have different strengths and different talents too. So the language is changing. When I first started in this work, the notion of person first language was popular. Person with a disability, person with, and I'll use autism as an example, people who are deaf. And a lot of people in the disability movement, a lot of people living with disabilities prefer person first language. However, there are people, particularly in the autism community and the deaf community, for whom their identity as an autistic person or a deaf person is part of that, the piece that's woven into just who they are and prefer to be called autistic, deaf. So we could go long and hard into languages, but that's really kind of it in a nutshell. This year was the 30th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act. And the ADA, when it was passed, did not include or cover faith communities for the most part. And there's a lot of reasons why that is. And but suffice to say, that's how it passed Congress. That's how it was approved and signed in 1990. So I look at the ADA. It gives guidelines for employing people with disabilities, things you can do, things you can't do as an employer, how to create accessibility in a building, and just so many other things. Now, website development, and so forth. There's a lot in there. It really serves as a moral mandate for the faith community population or the faith community organizations. So again, the ADA has value for us in faith communities. And because of COVID-19, suddenly we stopped seeing each other. Suddenly that all ended. And so more people are experiencing isolation, depression, and other mental health considerations that had never been diagnosed before, just didn't have a diagnosis. It's really raising up a lot of internal turmoil for a lot of us. And so now on the flip side, during COVID-19, we've made it easier to attend services and programs thanks to Zoom and Facebook Live and YouTube and any number of platforms. So many people who were hesitant to participate in person, including people with disabilities and mental health conditions, many people feel more comfortable going to a Zoom service. It'll be interesting to see with the high holidays. So many organizations, so many synagogues and Hillels and all kinds of organizations are opting to do online services. And there are others that are doing in-person services as well with social distancing and precautions and so on and so forth. So again, this is, it's changing how we come together. So the focus has really changed. And this is probably the most important thing that I can share with you tonight. A sense of belonging is the heartbeat of inclusion. So our goal, yes, it may be inclusion, but the belonging piece is universal, and that's something every single one of us shares. So I'm going to ask you, I was going to do a poll, but polls, you can only have 10 answers, and this is a great question to generate more than one answer, or more than 10 answers. So let's use the chat feature if you're comfortable doing that, and write down, type in what gives you a sense of belonging in your Jewish life, and you can write down more than one thing. You can certainly type in as many things as you want. So DoorDash just arrived at our house, and our Shelties are like, ooh, do we get some food? This is good. Keep going. Yeah. This is so good. Okay. These are great. These are great. We have community and a warm welcome at the door, warm and caring clergy, feeling welcomed, a handshake, a hug, working together on shared goals, family, Jewish rituals and traditions, Acknowledging. Mark, do you mean being acknowledged and acknowledging others, or yes, thank you. Knowing people by name and them knowing me, and being comfortable with prayers, like-minded individuals and shared values. All of these things tie us in different ways, common interests. Maybe it's how we grew up. Maybe we talk to other people and we realize, oh, we're singing the prayers the way I sang them when I was growing up in my shul, or so many different things. This all points to community, doesn't it? And so imagine, just for a moment, the thing that is so important to you, that gives you a sense of belonging in your Jewish life. Imagine that is gone. Imagine that I could just reach over and take that away from you. What would that be like for you? Here, I'm gonna, let's see if I can, go ahead and write that in the chat. If somebody just came by, let's say you had 3 things that were so important to you, you couldn't live without them, and somebody just came by and took them all away from you, or didn't even ask you what they were. And yet we do that without thinking sometimes. We do that when we don't have a conversation with somebody who we meet who has a disability. I'd feel lost. Yeah. Gosh. Sense of, real sadness, real loss. So imagine you're that person who just wants to be part of the Jewish community. And let's say, yes, we want, I want to go to high holiday services. Okay, sure. Come on in. Just come in. You're so welcome here. And maybe they get greeted at the door, and then they go and sit, and there's really nobody they know or anybody to sit with them. There's no community for them. There's nobody that has said, hey, sit with me, or let's get to know each other. Let's just have a conversation. That's the essence of belonging, and that's the piece that's been missing for so long. So if somebody came by and took that important thing away from you, and you never had it again, that would really be crushing. So let's talk about this belonging business. Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie is a writer who gave this TED Talk, great TED Talk, and it was called The Danger of a Single Story. And this is what she said. The consequence of the single story is this: it robs people of dignity. It makes our recognition of our equal humanity difficult. It emphasizes how we are different rather than how we are similar. So how do we acknowledge and celebrate and embrace all of those people in our community who just want to be part of the community if we don't learn their story and share our stories? That's communication. And that is really the key to creating an inclusive organization, an inclusive community. And I just love this. And anything that we're doing here, I'm happy to share the PowerPoint with you. I'm recording it. If you feel that there's use for it in your own organization or your community, please share this. So I always try and get some of my grandchildren in my presentations. So this was great. This was taken when the book first came out. You can tell how happy they are that their bubby is reading them, her book. But when I was preparing to write this book, I wanted to introduce the concept of belonging, and I've been thinking about that for so long. As our Jewish communities were really focused on how to be more inclusive. But early in my career, so this is 19 years ago, I met Sharon, and she's a Jewish woman who lives in my community, who lives with a disability. She uses a wheelchair, and her spoken language is difficult to discern. She has cerebral palsy that's impacted her speaking and her walking and her movements. So I went to visit her in her home, and she told me I was the first Jewish person to ever come to her house, which I found astounding since she'd been living in Minneapolis for 14 years. She moved to Minneapolis because she was from a small town in North Dakota, and she wanted to be part of the Jewish community. So we struck up a conversation, and I asked her the same question that I just asked you. What gives you a sense of belonging? What's so important to you in your Jewish life that you can't live without? And she said to me, all I've ever wanted is to belong. All I've ever wanted is to belong. Wow, her words. And this haunted me for years, all the years that followed, because I wanted to make belonging a central theme in the work that many of us are doing in order to eliminate invisibility. And I built my career working with Jewish organizations to raise awareness and to work with individuals with disabilities and mental health conditions and their families, those who love them, so they too could feel that sense of belonging in this amazing place we call the Jewish community. Well, all I've ever wanted to belong is why we are engaged in inclusion in the first place. And belonging and inclusion, rather than being exclusive of each other, are two parts that are necessary to create a community where all belong. And I wanted, Rabbi Christensen here. Honestly, some of my friends call me Rabbi Christensen. It's kind of silly, but fun. I sought I wanted to find a foundational text about belonging. And many faith communities, all different religious traditions, adopted the iconic words of Isaiah. And that would be, for my house shall be a house of prayer for all peoples. Right there, Isaiah 56:7. So in my mind, I thought that was aspirational, but it didn't describe that precious sense of belonging where every person's gifts and strengths and talents and contributions and their needs were part of what made a house of prayer for all peoples. So I kept looking for some text to describe that, and honestly, it was right in front of my nose. There it was, and it's the beginning of Isaiah 56:7. It goes like this. I will bring them to my holy mount, and I will cause them to rejoice in my house of prayer. Their burnt offerings and their sacrifices shall be acceptable upon my altar, for my house shall be a house of prayer for all peoples. Think about this. In God's eyes, at least as described in this verse, every one of us has something to contribute. And God brings us together through the Holy Mount so we can share our gifts, accept our gifts, and we all rejoice in that sacred space. And whether it's the temple in Jerusalem, or whether it's our synagogues and our schools and our JCCs and our organizations, the mikvot, everything, and especially now on Zoom, we rejoice in that sacred space together, in joy, in holiness, and as God's partners. Well, everyone belongs, and that's what makes a house of prayer for all people. So I'm just going to show you how I put this together in a lovely illustration. I see things in my mind, and I just love to put them together, but I don't have that art skill. Oh well. A house of prayer for all peoples is this. The spirit of belonging is one part, and the structure of inclusion is the other part, and they come together. They are joined at the center. So the spirit of belonging, this is a person-centered focus, and this just says that all people have unique contributions and needs and are respected and valued, and it really relies on communication and it engages people with disabilities and mental health conditions to share their personal experiences, their interests, hopes, dreams, their strengths as a member of the community. All I've ever wanted to belong, and this is why. And by the same token, when you have a conversation, it's a dialogue. So the person who is listening also shares their hopes, their dreams, the things that give them a sense of belonging. It's not a, oh yes, person with a disability, tell me what you need. Let me write that down. It's not that at all. It's a genuine conversation. And then the structure of inclusion, that's what we've been working on for so many years. And this is very, very important. It's focuses on the organization and the responsibility of the organization for the internal changes that have to be made. And this provides a set of tools to assess your organization. Where are you at right now? What's the present landscape? Creates a leadership team to develop a vision and strategies to address and advance belonging and inclusion. And so it's not a, let's just try to be more inclusive. This is really intentional. And my experience is this is really the way to get things done. Okay, my notes say to stop the screen share. So now it's just us. So 7 months ago, February, we recognized Jewish Disability Awareness, Acceptance, and Inclusion Month, which we call familiarly JDAME. So, and Jewish communities and organizations around the US and Canada and around the world were alive with all of these great programs and presentations and opportunities to provide avenues for people with disabilities and people with mental health conditions and those who care for them and love them to feel that intimate and communal sense of belonging. And I tell you, hundreds of organizations around the world participated in JDAME this year. So we're now turning our attention to JDAME 2021 or 5781. It's in February. If you want to know why it's in February, you can ask the question. It's really, but if we have time, I can talk about that. Yes, you can, Nancy. Unmute yourself. Oh, unmute. Sorry, I lost you there. I have to ask you to unmute. There we go.
Okay, good. Okay, thank you. I just wanted to back up for a moment. I know we're going to have two topics during your conversation. Because I know we have people here that work in organizations, a topic that has become very popular is the idea of having an inclusion committee or an inclusion council within the framework of your organization. So if it's a temple, would it be a committee that would address topics of inclusion? If it's a JCC, and I was wondering if we could just take a moment and talk about structure do's and don'ts.
Absolutely.
If you find that organizations or houses of worship that have inclusion committees, what makes that successful, right? Like identifying the goal and then having incremental achievable steps to get there. Can you give us a little bit of what that looks like on the ground?
Absolutely. And I'm happy to do another webinar on the nuts and bolts of it too, if you'd like. It depends on your organizational structure. So if you're an organization, it doesn't matter what kind of organization, and you have committees to address particular areas, then by all means, inclusion committee, an accessibility committee, you can call it a number of names, a task force, anything like that. And those work really well as long as there are people on there, number one, who live with disabilities and mental health conditions, nothing about us without us, as long as it's a shared leadership. So in other words, and I talk about this in my book, about a synagogue that had a parent who was chairing the committee, and her issue was accessibility to, for her child. And that was her agenda. And she never communicated with anybody else on the committee or with the clergy or anyone, what the need or how to address the needs of the congregation. She was solely focused on her child. So what happened to that? People were just lost interest. They're like, this is not what I signed up for. And she actually got pretty frustrated because nobody wanted to help her. And that ended the committee. And they decided to regroup. This time, they had a leader for the committee, somebody who had the vision that to create a culture shift, you have to look at the whole organization. It's not just one area. It's not just one fix. You're not going to fix a problem and then move on to the next problem. You really need to know the lay of the land. And so when that person chaired the committee, everybody was involved, and everyone not only had opinions, but everybody had work. They had responsibilities. So it was a working committee, and it grew, and it was very successful. And I've seen that happen so many times where the committees grow. So it's what you, go ahead, Nancy.
So when you say grow, my question is, I'm always wondering about structure and then goals, right? So I think one of the most obvious goals to have for an inclusion committee or an inclusion task force is language. And you touched upon the importance of recognizing your language, of being aware of your language. So some people do like person first language, and somebody really do use that part of their life, the disability diagnosis, as an identifier. So are there maybe three, let's say, universal or most common denominator goals that every task force or every inclusion committee should try to achieve and have them stated? And I'm assuming language would be one. Is that something that you would suggest?
So without shilling everybody, use my book because it's all laid out in there. But for the three critical areas, first of all, you've got to convene a committee that's the people who are committed, and it's got to be in partnership with the laity and with the professional staff, with the clergy. So it's a whole group. The committee takes on the kind of the direction or the work. Okay, so the thing that I recommend, there's a couple of things. The first thing is for a committee to develop a mission statement or a purpose. What is this committee going to achieve? And it might take a little bit of time to develop a mission statement. And that helps define for not just the group, but for everyone, what this group is charged with. A more long-term thing would be to do an assessment of the congregation. And I'm not talking about a survey. I'm not a fan of surveys for getting, real answers and in supporting people. But I am a huge fan of doing an assessment. And that simply means that you sit down with a series of questions, sit down and have a conversation with the people who are in charge of various parts of the organization to find out what they're currently doing. Okay, and the questions in the book are developed for conversation, not for yes and no answers, and they must be done in person. So the assessment is important because how do you know where you're going unless you know where you are? Yeah. Through the assessments and through just the committee looking at some of the things that come up in assessments and some of the things that they've learned about, they can develop a set of goals.
Okay. So you're saying have a mission statement, have an assessment, and then once you have an idea of who you are, then only then can you make appropriate goals.
Right. And then you publicize that you're doing all of this, number one. And number two, we also want to see immediate results, right? So Some of, well, so some of the easiest things to do, take a look at the website, for example. Take a look at all the communications. Everything that comes out. Is there a statement that says if you require an accommodation, please contact us to, and we'll arrange that. Okay. That's pretty easy to do now. Accommodations range from all kinds of things, and some of them, some may be really costly, but there's also alternatives that aren't so costly that also help foster that sense of belonging, making sure people have access to what you're doing. And that
you raise the topic for them, that you have an awareness that there might be needs in the room. You're saying that's very important, that you raise a topic and you say, here I am, hineni, here I am. That's right. I can hear you. Tell me what you need.
Right. And, membership applications should always have a question or an explanation of a question. What do you need in order to participate? Is there anything we can support you doing? Not, can we help you? Can we, we want to embrace you. Tell us what you need. Sometimes people don't know what they need, or they don't know what to ask for. But if even so, on a membership application, and again, they're always going to sit down and have a conversation, maybe with the clergy, executive director, membership, leaders, have this conversation with them. Well, what works? I do need an accommodation. Well, what would work for you? Let's work together to create this. So those are just a couple of things. And don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to make mistakes in all of this, because, that's gonna happen. So, and I think that now, and I kind of want to talk about, if that's okay, and I'm really happy to entertain questions, because I'm not married to my agenda. 4 committee okay. Temple Beth Shalom. Okay, Mark, there are 4 committee members in this important program. Okay, so Mark, your synagogue has an inclusion committee, right? Should I unmute you? Do you want to?
Hi, how are you?
I'm great. Welcome, or welcome to me.
Thank you.
Hang out with you guys.
There you go. Well, first of all, thank you so much. I've got your book now in my Amazon cart, by the way.
Thank you.
And it was the last one available, so I jumped on it, and I just have to pay for it, which I will after the class. I want to tell you that our 2 co-chairs from our synagogue are on this call, our 2 inclusion committee co-chairs, and another valuable member of our committee. Plus, we also have another member of our temple. So we're well represented here, and we're very pleased and proud to be here. So you bring up such great points, and we often ask ourselves, we do have a mission statement, and we do participate in JDIME, and we do offer things like glasses for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. We do have large print books. We have areas for wheelchairs. We have disability bathrooms and all gender bathrooms, and we have all the things that I think you talk about. But we still want to take it to the next step, and we still want to make sure we're meeting everyone's needs, and we still want to make sure that we're really doing what we need to do to meet our temple, our congregation needs. That's why it's so important to us.
So I'm gonna suggest this. It just came into my head, which it happens all the time, sort of weird, but when we talk about meeting people's needs, do we all have needs? And do we ask people who aren't disabled what their needs are in order to participate? I think it's really important to just step back again. to see a person not as somebody who necessarily needs our help, but as someone who may need our support. There's a big difference between feeling somebody's helping you. How does that feel when someone helps you? Does it have a feeling of, does it take away some of that power that you have? Does it diminish you? But what about if we say, and maybe not, but what if we say support? How can I support you? Let's talk about ways that you can participate. Let's talk about how you will participate or what you want. Number one, what do you want? I want to come to services. Or let's put it in today's context. I want to come to services. I know you're doing them on Zoom, for example. And what I want to do is to be able to to come to services electronically, but I don't know how. I don't know how, or I don't have the equipment. I don't have a smartphone, and I don't have a tablet, and I don't have a computer. Now that changes the dynamic, right? It's like, okay, now let's talk about, we know what you need. You're telling us what's so important to you. And here's an opportunity for you. Now we're going to work together. And we're going to work with our community, our congregation, to make sure you have the tools that you need and that you know how to use them, or that somebody can support you to use them. So I don't know how many of you have done like a technology drive, asking people to donate working equipment. Working is the key. That's set up with Zoom, for example, that someone is able to deliver it to them, and ask them if there's somebody who can help them set it up, who can help them log on to the meeting. And if not, I know congregations that are volunteers are masking up, and they're going to group homes, senior places, senior apartments. They're masking up, and they're going the morning of services, and they're getting the person online. I mean, what we're dealing with takes so much wonderful creativity. And Nancy, you talked about that earlier, that we're forced to be creative. Our goal has to be making sure that anybody who wants to be part of our community, our synagogues, our schools, our whatever it is, anybody who wants to volunteer, anybody who wants to help and contribute and just belong like everyone else, that's our goal. And that is also a responsibility to bring somebody in to our community. Does that help? And I can get more into specifics too. So, what if I just unmute everybody and you can come on? And I'm gonna, nope. Oh, come on, man. And allow participants to unmute themselves. Hi, everybody.
Okay, I'm good. So I hear you saying that technology is a barrier for some people, because even, listen, there's a whole department in my organization that is the tech department, right? So we've all been on a really steep learning curve, and here we are, and we're problem solving, we're working at it in the moment, right? But I think also there are people that their tech is not a tool like you and I would use it to access things, but yet tech has some sort of connotation of ability or inability, right? So it becomes another barrier to access. So I hear you saying that it might be an opportunity for us as congregations or organizations to say, let's take a survey. Let's see who needs the technology, who
Mhm.
does not have an iPad or smartphone or access to a device within their home. And then also let's follow that up with instruction on how to use it. And that could be eliminating a barrier.
Absolutely.
Personally, I think also closed captioning. I think almost everything we do should be closed captioned. I think that for people with hearing issues or with auditory processing issues or some sort of issue that impedes their ability to work with the spoken word comfortably. And I think that also includes people with dementia or Alzheimer's. So we're creating a wider pool to assist. That closed captioning really, really helps a large number of people.
Well, and how many of you use closed captioning who aren't hard of hearing?
I do.
I use it all the time. I want to talk about that because as we approach the holidays, captioning is probably one of the easiest things to do. Now that said, in Zoom, if you're the host, there's a little button that says closed captioning. And you can click on that and it gives you some options. And one of the options is for you who's running the show or appointing someone and giving them access to type in real time. And I host a webinar series called Everyone's Welcome. And we have someone from one of the agencies who volunteered to type for us. So everything is captioned now, and I can't tell you what a difference it makes. And it sits on the playback, so you don't have to, if you save something on Zoom or on YouTube, it'll give you automatic captioning, but this captions in real time. The other option would be to pay for a company to come in and do transcription in real time. So, and that's another option on Zoom. So Zoom has made it pretty easy. It's the human to do the typing. That's the challenge. So don't, try not to think of this as, oh, it's another expense. Think of it as another way, another modality for people to be part of the service. And, and the same with sign language interpretation. Yeah, that's going to cost more. And honestly, I love watching sign language interpreters, ASL interpreters, but if nobody has requested that accommodation, it's a show.
Yeah.
You want to make sure that these are addressing people's accommodation requests. And I hope nobody's a sign language interpreter because I don't mean to drive away business. But
and I think I don't want to, we're just 5 minutes before we end, so I'm sure that we have many more questions in our minds.
Yeah.
But I do also want to touch on the coming celebration next February for Jewish Disabilities Awareness, Acceptance, and Inclusion Month. Within our own community, this past February, I have just joined the staff. I'm now with the staff a year, and our community has always actively supported the month, but this was
Is everybody frozen? There we go. Oops. We are frozen.
I think, Shelly, you may be frozen.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Okay.
Are we good?
Sorry about that.
So we had about 20 activities. How do you see JDEM going forward in the coming February? What would you suggest to us community?
Okay. I think it's a huge opportunity. It's something we've never seen before. So last February, I was home maybe 6 days. I was traveling and going to different communities and speaking and leading conferences and things like that. Now we're not going to be doing that this year. We're going to be, oh, sorry. Are we on still? Are we okay? Okay, good. Think about this. We have moved into the Zoom world. You're going to be able to have speakers come via Zoom and go to services, give Divrei Torah, lead Torah study, meet with your board of trustees, choose topics that are relevant to your congregation or your organization, to have speakers, and it has to be online. I don't think any of us are going to be in person. I'm really happy to say, we just had cemented an agreement with an author named Amy Lutz, who wrote the book We Walk, W-A-L-K. It's coming out, it's published October 15th. And Amy, L-U-T-Z, Amy Lutz, she's a published author, she's a blogger, and this book is about her journey raising their son Jonah, their oldest child. They have 5 kids. Jonah has extreme autism, severe autism. He does not speak. She says also that he has an intellectual disability. And I'm reading the book right now, and it's just like, she doesn't sugarcoat it. Some of these parent books, these memoirs, are lovely, but they're all like, oh, and then this person was nice to us, and we did this, and we did that. And she's out there, and she tells the story of how many parents feel when, especially with children who have more complex diagnoses, and how they're treated. And I think she'll be a really good speaker. She's agreed to do book talks. So you could do a book club, book talks. Every year we choose films, and we're always looking for new films. Mm-hmm. And this is the power of JDAME. It's like everybody can come together and share these resources. There are some great films. I'm
just going to give a plug to Real Abilities, which is a film festival, and our own Miami Jewish Film Festival, which is a wonderful, wonderful platform for learning and sharing, and has been recognized nationally, has supported our community with a film during their film festival. But film is a great way to learn and instruct in a compassionate way. Yes,
absolutely. The thing with JDAME, it wasn't created specifically to speak to the choir. It certainly affirms the choir, for sure. But really, the original and continuing purpose or goal or vision for JDAME is to bring the rest of the Jewish world on board. It's like, stop looking at people as different. What do you mean you never thought about people with disabilities except to look at them and go, they're weird, or they don't belong here, or Jews don't have disabilities? It's such an opportunity to enlighten and to empower the entire community. Mm-hmm. And some of the really nice developments of the last couple of years, Chabad, the Ruderman Chabad Inclusion Initiative, started Shabbat Together. And I know that the Chabad houses and friendship circles and organizations in Miami participated in Shabbat Together. I don't have the date yet. I'm one of their consultants, but they put together a lot of things. They did last year, I think, they did a lot on mental health. Mm-hmm. And now we're bringing on other faiths, not for JDAME itself, but something called Community for All. So what we're doing is really, when I tell you, we started with 4 communities in 2009, and now it's this global behemoth. Wow. And there's no staff. I'm its volunteer. This is my volunteer job.
A wonderful accomplishment.
Well, really it's important. And to talk about this with you, and I'm really happy. If you want to do a webinar and do some brainstorming on JDAME, I'm here.
That'd be wonderful.
Yeah, because there's a lot you can do. Now, like, listen to some of the things that over the high holidays in sermons, and just from, in the ways we connect with people, listen to those things and see what, if there's something there that might be a spark for JDAME, to raise awareness. I think it's really, really important. I create a JDM guide every year, and that has, the films, the books, and things you can do. We have a logo that's, you just download it.
Yeah.
We just finished the 2021 logo. And, come together, because here's the thing. It's also it's a good time to re-energize your inclusion committee or task force, or to start a new one. There's just so many things. Having people with disabilities, I've sat on panels with people with disabilities, and just so powerful.
Mm-hmm.
So powerful.
Yeah, I agree.
These are, I'm want to put up my, I'm just gonna share this. I want to put up my website and email address too.
Yes, please. That'd be wonderful.
That's not the one I want, is it? These are all the things that we didn't cover. There's the JDAM logo for 2021.
Great.
Okay. And this is really, I think this is really important too. That talks about all of us, especially people who we don't think of as being created b'Tselem Elohim, or we don't give it a lot of thought. And that's from Deuteronomy Rabbah. A procession of angels passes before each person, and the heralds go before them, make way for the image of God. Make way for b'Tselem Elohim. My dear friend, Rabbi Lynn Landsberg, we don't welcome people because they have disabilities. We welcome them because they are people. And here's information. My website, which I apologize for in advance. We're renovating it, and we're not quite ready to go live. So, but you'll see some of the things on there, some ideas and so forth. And then please feel free to reach out to me, Shelly at inclusioninnovations.com.
Wow. Well, thank you. Where will we be able to access this recording? Will you share it with me, and then I can share it?
Yes, I will. Mm-hmm. Yep, I'll download it as soon as we're done.
That'd be wonderful.
Feel free to edit it.
I'm going to just check the chat. Oh, Mark Rennick says he loves that image. I think it was the image that you had with the quote. Very inspirational. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
This was our trip to Alaska. See, I just bring my real life into all my presents.
Your real life.
My real life. This is
your real life. It's all your real life. I
Right.
want to thank you for taking the time and sharing your knowledge with us, and being so warm in the presentation. For us as a community, we are striving together to make sure that there's room for everyone to participate, that we really try to widen the circle, and to recognize that all people within the community have an opportunity to feel included, to be welcome, and to be leaders.
Absolutely.
Exactly. It's that shift away of what can I do for you to what can we do together.
Exactly.
And that's where we are as a community, in that everyone has the opportunity not to just be thought of as the recipient of services, but as the lay leader, as the volunteer, as the colleague, as the person that is your neighbor, that is someone who will be married and have children and create great richness in our community.
That's right. And
we underscored that. So
we sometimes say people with disabilities aren't your mitzvah project.
Exactly. I'm not here to make your life to make you a better person. Exactly.
They're also performers of mitzvot.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
My challenge is not to bring out the best in you.
Yeah. It's not my job. My job is just to be another person with another person, a Jew with a Jew.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time and your commitment and all of the change that you brought to our community as a whole, and to taking you could have just taken care of your own child, right? But you really decided to make the path better for the next person. And I really appreciate you doing that for us as a community and going forward.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
It's a pleasure. Thank you all for coming to see me, to visit.
Thank you so much, Shelly. Thank you.
Oh,
And
John.
I will share the link in an email once I receive it.
perfect.
Thank you.
All right. This is my friend
Thank you,
Stacy.
Val.
Thank you, Nancy. Thank you.
Nancy, thank you.
No.
Let's continue the conversation.
Yes. Thanks so much.
All right. Be
Have a
well,
safe day.
everybody. Lee Trout.
Okay. Thank you.